Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Today we have Map Publisher expert, Riley Sweeney. She is from the company Avenza that they produce the Map Publisher software, and she will be talking about a lot of things that we might know about how to use Map Publisher, details about Map Publisher. So I really appreciate Riley you joining us, and over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I'm Riley. I'm here today with Gabriel, who hopefully you can see him in the call. We do the Map Publisher training at Avenza, and I'm also a QA specialist for our desktop products. I'm aware that you guys have been working with Map Publisher in Illustrator so far throughout your course. So hopefully today I can give a deeper understanding of some things that you can do in Map Publisher, and then point you towards some good examples of it being used in the industry. So jumping ahead. So before we get into Map Publisher, just to give you a bit of visibility to what else we do at Avenza, these are our current products. So on desktop, we have, of course, Map Publisher, but we also have Geographic Imager, which is a GIS plugin for Adobe Photoshop. So that's where you can work with all of your raster data in Photoshop. On the mobile side, we have the Avenza Maps app, and it's an offline mapping app for navigation and data collection, and it allows you to use custom maps or those purchased from our map store. So if you're interested in anything beyond Map Publisher, I would encourage you to look into it, or you can reach out to me with any questions. All right. So now to get into what we're here for today, Map Publisher. As you know, Map Publisher is the bridge between a GIS and the powerful graphic design platform, Adobe Illustrator. This allows you as cartographers the ease and precision of maintaining your geospatial information when you're creating your maps. So as much as we would like you to begin and end every project in Map Publisher, it is likely that you'll find yourself working with multiple GIS and visualization tools within a project. So you may find yourself asking when and where does Map Publisher come into your cartographic process? So I think the best way to understand when to begin using Map Publisher is by knowing what types of data you can open and import. So as you probably know, we support all of the common geospatial formats like your Esri shapefiles, GeoJSONs. We have some database support, and we support some online services as well. Those are the pretty obvious ones. They're visible in the format dropdown on our import dialogues. And they're easy to see with our hundreds of supported projections. The process of importing your geospatial data is pretty seamless and straightforward. But in addition to data held in these formats, you may have something like a PDF, or you're starting with non-spatial vectors that you can open up in Illustrator. You can then use Map Publisher to assign real-world coordinates and provide georeference to your data. So if your starting point for your projects is pretty bare bones, you can use Map Publisher to build it up to an accurately referenced and beautifully designed map. Today, we're going to walk through kind of a basic cartographic process, but the focus will be on efficiency and hopefully showcase a few aspects of Map Publisher that you may not have worked with. And we'll demo things as we go through so that you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. All right. So in order to work with real life data and avoid growing your project files beyond usability, because I'm sure we've all experienced Illustrator freezing or crashing when we're trying to do something, we highly recommend that you make use of the import filtering options. These allow you to cut down your data set significantly, and it allows you to work with large data sets. So these are available in both the simple import as well as the multiple data import, which we'll take a look at in a moment. Here you can see the three types of filters that we can apply. So starting with the layer filter, this allows you to access and utilize the attributes within a file to choose which attributes are imported, as well as apply attribute expressions to choose which features are imported. The spatial filter allows you to use the spatial properties of an imported layer along with properties of a chosen input to apply filtering relationships like crop, within, and intersection. An example would be to enter two bounding coordinates and crop to that extent. The final filtering option is simplification, which is also available within MAPublisher tools. Depending on the file type, the simplification can be applied to lines and areas together or separately. And the option is to either split your vectors that exceed the vertex limit in Illustrator. If you're not aware, Illustrator does have a vertex limit of 32,000 for each feature. So we can split these larger areas or lines into compound lines, or you can just simplify by reducing the number of vertices on each feature. So all of these filters can also be saved to your program data. So these can be accessed through any documents in the dropdowns that you see here, where it displays default. If you've created and saved a filter that commonly applies to your data sets, you can also pin it as the default. So this will save you time. You just have to come in and check off the box, and then you can use that filter. So let's go into Illustrator and we'll actually take a look at what these filters look like. And we'll start with this document here. It contains some road segments from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I was recently there for the NACIS conference. It's an annual cartography conference. I would encourage you to look into that if cartography is your passion. It was a very cool experience. Anyway, we're going to be using some Pittsburgh data, and we'll start with the simple import on the MAPublisher toolbar. And I'm going to start by bringing in this population shapefile. So this is a data set from the Pittsburgh Open Data Portal, and it contains some information that we'll use to create a thematic map showing neighborhood populations. So for the purpose of our map, we only require a few attributes, so neighborhood names and those population values that we'll use for the symbology. But as with a lot of open data portal data sources, this has a ton of attributes, so many things that we do not need. So it's an absolute great use for our layer filter. So I'm going to click the filtering options hyperlink. And then to enable the layer filter, we'll check the box and click the icon. And here we have access to all of the attributes in this data set. And like I said, there are a ton. So we are going to just turn them all off and then go through and pick out the few that we want. So I'll bring in the names and maybe each year of all the population values. So by only bringing in a handful of these attributes, we'll cut down processing time on this layer significantly. Because if we brought everything in, each of these pieces of information and potentially even blank values are going to be attached to each feature. On the right-hand side, we can specify our expression to filter the features now. So I'll double-click to enable that expression field. And of course, you can type your expression right into here, or you can use the expression builder. Hopefully you have seen the expression builder before, but if not, it is used in quite a few places throughout MAPublisher tools. And it provides you with the operators to build up an expression. You have access to your attributes within the layer, as well as unique values. And then towards the very bottom, there's just some general functions and constants to utilize as well. So we'll just apply a basic expression here. Maybe we'll do names that are not equal to, pick a random neighborhood, Bloomfield. So we'll bring in everything that is not that neighborhood. It's a super simple expression, of course, but you can really build up a complex expression here to cut down your data sets if needed. There we go. We're going to filter which attributes and which features we are bringing in. I'll click OK. And here's where you have the option to save it. So if this is something I wanted to reuse at a later date, or if I do have to re-import this data set for any reason, then this filter could be saved for me to reuse. But I'll click OK, and we'll just bring it in. I'm going to be adding everything to this existing map view using the existing scale. And there we have our neighborhood polygons. Okay. Now, before we move on, we'll bring in a few more data sets, but we're going to go through the multiple data import this time. So we'll open that up from the MAPublisher toolbar. And if you've never used this import tool, it allows you to bring in multiple data sets. They can be different file types, different coordinate systems, and you can bring them all in applying the same spatial filter and transforming them to a succinct map view in one process. So we'll start by adding some data sources to our queue here. Bring in this watershed file. We still do have the filtering link when you're adding a data source. If I click it, you'll see that you only have access to the layer filter through this method. That's because it utilizes attributes, so it has to be unique to each data set. So if we wanted to come in and apply a layer filter, we would do that here. I'll just add it. Once we have all our data sets in, we can apply the spatial filter and simplification on this dialog because it applies to everything at once. We'll add in 2 more data sets. Oops. Bring in this land use GeoJSON. And then the last one I'm going to bring in is a geodatabase. If you do find yourself working with geodatabases, the spatial filtering options are slightly different. So I'm going to connect and choose my feature class in the geodatabase. And the spatial filter option built into the geodatabase reader is right here in this dialog. If I click it, these are fairly limited options. And when you're using the simple import method with a geodatabase, you are restricted to this spatial filter. So that is something to keep in mind. We have our intersects, crop to filter. You can use the extents of an existing layer in the document or set your points manually. So if you're doing it independently, that is your limitation. And for layer filtering, you are limited to the SQL query as well. But because we're bringing it into the multiple data import, we can still make use of the spatial filter options here. So if you're working with a geodatabase, I recommend bringing it in through this dialog so that you can leverage all of the options in this spatial filter. So we'll click the spatial filter, and here you can see all of the options. As far as relationship, we have intersects, contains, or crop. Right here, we're seeing the extents of our current data set, and we can filter it using any of the options above, and we'll see those extents change. So the first option is using an online map. If you wanted to just make a general crop or filter of your data set, you can adjust those pins there. You can also choose an existing map layer in the document. You can set a bounding box, doing opposite corners, or a position with dimensions. And that can use any coordinate system. This is a hyperlink here. We can choose from an existing map view in our document. So in this case, if we choose the population map view, that is going to be the entire extent of our artboard, because that's the extent of the data. You can also choose from an external vector file or from a coordinate system envelope. So we are just going to use the map view extent, because in this case, it'll crop everything nicely to our artboard. Go ahead and click OK. And just like the other filters, you can save things here under any name, send them as your default. If you haven't used the multiple data import before, there are a few options when you're bringing the data in. So you can base a new map view on any of these data sets. You can use an existing map view in the document, or you can create a new one from scratch. In this case, we'll just bring everything into our existing map view using the existing scale. And we should see everything nicely cropped to our artboard. So those are pretty large data sets, and we did crop them down significantly, which is a great starting point. Now that our layers are in, it is a fairly simple document, but in most projects, realistically, you might be working with tons of layers. At some point in your career, you may also, unfortunately, inherit a master document with a huge mess of Illustrator layers that's been used for years. I've seen them firsthand. They're a mix of non-spatial data, your map layers, imagery, all sorts of things. And so at this point, I'd like to just put a pause on our workflow and show you an example of a map that has kind of a mess of layers and how we can go about cleaning it up. Switch back to here. All right, so here is a map. It has a number of inset maps for the Toronto area. And if you take a look at the layers panel on the right-hand side, all of the layers kind of share similar naming structure. They're just all individually listed in there. And it does look kind of crazy. I think for users that come from Illustrator experience, the instinct is to work from that layers panel. But when it comes to a spatial document, we have to remember that working with the map views panel and the layers panel simultaneously is the best approach. So that map views panel will show you what area and scale is being represented by a map layer. It also shows you which layers don't hold spatial information, so they won't be affected by changes in projection or scale. And the layers panel is where that drawing order is displayed. So that's super important. We're creating a visual product. We need to know what our drawing order is. When you look at the original version of this document, each layer is an independent item. As I said, things are a little bit crazy. The order may also be kind of random because these inset maps don't necessarily overlap each other. So the layer order may just be how things were imported, and things are randomly distributed through this panel. So if we needed to target a layer, it could be somewhat of a crazy process. So here is an example of the same document, but we've cleaned it up. So you can see on the layers panel that we're utilizing non-map layers to organize those map layers. So we've got insets 1 through 6. We have a main map and layout elements section. You could do something similar for layer types, general areas, data sources, however you want to sort it out. My recommendation is to not shy away from the use of non-map layers for organization here. It will save you a ton of time. If something goes wrong, you can easily target your layers. You know where to find them. The MAPublisher tools will always pull your layer from the map views panel where they're each independent, they're in their respective map views. So nesting it in a non-map layer has no impact. So I highly recommend you consider keeping your things organized in your documents. If something does go wrong and you need to contact our lovely support team, Gabriel works on our support team, I'm sure he would appreciate seeing a document like this so that we can help you achieve what it is you're trying to do. So keep things organized, use your non-map layers. You can also ask yourself which document out of this one or the original you'd prefer to receive for an ongoing project. something to keep in mind. Now that we've covered how to avoid the madness of endless features or disorganized layers, we'll get back into our workflow. Our layers are all in and they're ready to be styled. Styling in Illustrator with MAPublisher can be approached in a few different ways. Because we're in Illustrator, you can always make use of the endless manually styling tools. That's what Illustrator is there for. However, we can also utilize our basic styling properties, character styles, graphic styles, custom symbols, all within the MAPublisher map themes. So we can then utilize our attribute values as well to create and apply those styles. One of the other things that we can do within our map theme style sheets is apply auto assign rules. So these can be a huge time saver when you're working with repetitive or similar data sets. And typically you'd utilize these auto assign rules in a template document, which you use to start your various projects. The auto assign rules will allow that template to catch a layer name on import, and then it will automatically apply your style. So we'll go back to our document and we'll take a look at our map theme style sheets. Okay, so in this document, we currently have a roads line style sheet. It's used to apply. Hopefully you can see the gray roads in the background here. Rather than starting from scratch on each of these layers, something to keep in mind is that you can borrow assets from other documents. So I currently have this map here, and it has some map themes in here that apply to some of my other layers. So we'll go back to this document, and using the copy map objects from tool, you can access all the assets from any other open document. So that includes the layers themselves, the map views, map themes, map selections, expressions, all of the things that you've stored in another document. You can pull in just by checking them here. So we'll bring over all of those map themes. And then we'll open them up, starting with land cover. We've got all the rules as well as the visual properties. And we just need to choose which layer to apply these to. So we'll check that. Realistically, you may have to make slight tweaks to maybe the attributes or the values that are being used to make it actually match up to your other data set. This one's kind of set up ideally so that we don't have to in the interest of time, but we can go ahead and apply each of our map themes that we borrowed and assign them to our layers in this document. You can see here, this is the population layer, and we have created a theme using the population values. Hopefully you've seen batch generate rules before within our style sheets. If not, I'll do a quick show of that. I'll grab a population attribute and load it in, and it will automatically generate some rules based on whatever method that you choose. And then you can set the visual properties here as well. So that can be a huge time saver when you're working with complex data sets. Close out of that because we've already got one set up here. And the last one will be water. And now that they're all assigned, we can go ahead and apply them. Just going to fix my layer order now that things are in. So that makes a bit more sense. And there we go. So for the auto assign rules, we are going to take a look at them in a little bit further down in our workflow. But we'll just leave them off here because everything's already in the document. So assigning them would only be useful if we were doing something like updating or re-importing one of our data sets. So we'll take a look at those after, just keep them in mind for now. Now here's the part where you have to forgive me because I'm not a cartographer. I'm gonna call this styling finished. Of course, you probably don't like what I've done here. You have so many different opinions of how we could have done it. I'm a QA specialist, not a cartographer, so these design choices are definitely not representative of what you can do with MAPublisher. So keep that in mind. Okay, so the next step in our workflow is going to be labeling. So you can do this with a number of tools in Illustrator. There's all the Illustrator type tools if you really want to do it manually, or we have our MAPublisher map tagger tools. There's one specifically designed for contours that allows for more of interactive placement using your attribute values. We also have the label features tool. Those can be kind of generally placed based on some basic placement rules. Or you can use the Label Pro add-on, which I'm happy to hear you guys are going to be using. So although you may find that Label Pro requires a bit of preemptive setup, when you're potentially placing hundreds of labels, the use of those placement, fitting, conflict avoidance, and custom styles and rules can just make it an intuitive process. And when it comes to efficiency in Label Pro, you can save the settings in a few different ways so that you can reuse them. So our rule sets or the label styles that you go in and customize, those can be saved to your program data. You can access them in any document when you select a compatible feature type. So of course, the rules are unique to lines, areas, points. And if you save one, anytime you go in with that compatible feature type, they are available. In addition to the styles and rules being saved, you can completely save your Label Pro setup, including any filters or advanced settings, and you can save them to an external file. So that allows you to load them into any compatible document. Maybe you've set things up, standardized rules for things like land cover, streets, and you want to reuse them, you can just pull in that external file. So we'll do that in our document. I'll go up to Label Pro on the MAPublisher toolbar. And we'll go to Import Settings. Label Pro settings are saved to a Label Pro settings file. And when you bring them in, everything should be set up for you. Now, of course, it did match these layer names. They were set up for this layer. But what you can do is save just the content and the general rules and setup, and then apply them to any existing layers in your document and kind of match them if it's not a perfect match like I have set up here. So here we've got land cover and land use set up as obstacles. For the population area, we are going to label with the latest population values available in our data set. And it is using some custom styles here. And then the water area is filtered to just a few of our river names. And we're using custom styles and rules within here as well. And rather than just having them as custom, if it's something that we do want to reuse, like I said, you can put it under a saved name and it's available in this dropdown. Because these are saved to an external place in your program data, if you do want to delete them, the best way to do it is wherever you're saving them. That goes for anything I've mentioned so far that gets saved to your program data. The file does exist buried in your program data, so you could delete it from there if you really wanted to, but definitely the best place to do it is here. Okay, so we've just brought in some external Label Pro settings. We don't have to start from scratch. We'll just go ahead and apply these labels here. All right. So there we've got our population values in each of our neighborhoods, as well as our main river names. And for the purpose of our demo today, we're going to consider this map done. I know it's very far from done. We're missing all the typical layout elements, but to keep things rolling here, we're going to call it done. Once again, forgive me, not a cartographer. When your projects are finished, the export options are pretty vast. Using MAPublisher, you can export your vector layers to GIS formats if you need to take your data out, bring it back in for any reason. Or your entire document can be exported to things like web tiles, geospatial PDFs, interactive HTML5 based web maps using our web map author. You can export to reference images, and you're in Illustrator, so definitely can go to print if you need to. All right, so now that we've covered some points of efficiency within MAPublisher, I would like to showcase the exact same workflow, leveraging one of our plugin tools in FME. So this allows you to write FME workspace outputs to Illustrator through MAPublisher FME Auto. If you are not familiar with FME, it's now called FME Form, previously FME Desktop. It is an authoring environment that enables you to create data integration workflows using a visual interface, so there's no coding involved. And I have created a workbench file that will mimic our previous workflow and leverage an AI template with automation settings to recreate the document. All I'm going to have to do is click one button. So we are going to start by taking a look at that Illustrator template and look at what we can save in those. So I'll open up my template file. If you've never worked with Illustrator template files before, they do open up like an untitled document. It's meant to be a starting place for your projects. And you can save a lot of assets in here. So in this one, we have all of our map themes, and they have been set up with auto assign rules. So you can see they're obviously not assigned to any layers. There's nothing in this document. But in the auto assign section, we have set up rules to catch the layer names. This particular type of rule may look a little bit complex. There's definitely a ton of documentation online to use this one. It's a bit more powerful with the things that you can do in these expressions, but we do have some simple examples as well. I believe that water is a simple one. Just starts with water. Fairly straightforward. You can add multiple rules if your data set name may be slightly unpredictable. And the types, there are a few options here as well. You just enter a pattern, and then hopefully things are applied automatically as you bring in your data. And we'll be using it in the context of an FME workspace, bringing the data in, but you can use this and they'll be applied if you manually import things as well. So just because we're using the template for FME doesn't mean that all of this is only for that purpose. Okay, so we have our map themes and they're all set up with the auto assign rules. In addition to that, something that's nice to set up for templates is in our automation settings. So that's the last button on the import export section of the toolbar. And this is what it looks like. So for map views, you can choose what happens when a matching map view is found. I'm sure you've seen as you're working through importing things, you get that prompt that says, would you like to add it to an existing map view? And if you don't want to see that all the time and there's just a standard process that you'd like to apply, you can come in here and choose that option. For the map style sheets, if you want to apply the map themes automatically, we'll come in here and enable that. Grids and graticules can also be generated automatically. We enable this option. You could specify a configuration file from the grids and graticules tool and bring in your custom grids. For labeling, you can apply some basic labeling. Let's set up here, or you can feed in that Label Pro settings file. So I've got pointed to the same one that we used previously. And then the last section of the automation settings is the export to geospatial PDF. It's a commonly exported format. So we allow you to point to that and utilize a settings file from that export method as well. So that's everything that's in my template. I'm going to go ahead and close that file and switch over to my FME workspace. If you've never used FME Workbench before, it may look a little crazy, but we'll go through everything that we're looking at here. So we'll start on this side. This is all of my readers. So these are bringing in my data sets from their location in my files. You can see all the data sets we were working with before. Towards the bottom, you'll remember that with our population layer that we brought in, we applied a layer filter. And in that layer filter, we filtered the attributes as well as the features. So I've utilized an attribute manager transformer to pick which attributes I'd like to bring in. You can see here when I hover over it, there's my original list of endless attributes. And down here are the ones that I've chosen to import. So it's filtering through there. And this one here is applying a expression. So value name does not equal Bloomfield, same expression that we used in our workflow. And that is a test filter transformer. Above that, we have a bounding box accumulator and a buffer. So something that we did to the rest of our data sets is spatially filter them by the extent of our map view. Because we don't have anything in our template document, there is no map view to filter by. There's nothing existing to use. So we have to generate an area to filter by using a different method. So in this case, I chose to generate a bounding box from my population layer, which is the focal point of my map. So that bounding box will look like, I'll just change the color. You can see this. I'll essentially just have a rectangle that is that extent you can see there. And because I don't want all the data to be clipped exactly to that extent, I applied that buffer so that we get a bit of breathing room on either side. And that output rectangle is being fed into each of these clippers. And they're going to clip down each of our other data sets. So that's what's happening in that section. Moving on, all of our layers come into this section where we're using attribute creator transformers. So I'm adding 2 attributes to each of these layers. The first one is a layer name attribute, and I'm using that to feed into our writer to make sure that each layer is output individually to a layer name that matches our map themes. The second attribute that I'm adding, you can see there, is a sort attribute. And I need to specify the layer drawing order on import to make sure that when I go into my document, it's pretty much done. And there's very minimal reorganization I have to do. So I've applied a sort to each of these, you can see. And then this transformer here takes that value, interprets it, and spits them out in order. The final component is the MAPublisher writer. This writer is specific to writing to MAPublisher. And I'll open up the parameters so you can see here. Let me access them.
Can I jump in with a quick question?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the numbers that are on the white lines, like the 72, 25, 212, 40, that's the actual number of pieces of data you have? Or what's that number represent?
Yep, that's the number of features coming out of every transformer.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. So within the MAPublisher writer parameters, this writer specifically, it will output an external FFS file. So every feature that's written using the writer, it's just going to be spit out somewhere externally, which you can import manually through MAPublisher as well. Moving down the list, our Illustrator parameters, we can specify our initial AI file. So maybe you're not starting from scratch, maybe you're writing to an existing document. You can point to that there, or your template as well. So I pointed to that template that we looked at. When everything finishes processing, it's going to save automatically. You can change that option as well. For the map view, because we don't have an existing map view in the document, we are going to create a new one. You can leave that up to Illustrator and MAPublisher's interpretation. It's just going to best fit to your artboard, and typically we'll give it a left placement. But I'm going to specify the same scale that we used in our previous document. So it's going to be 1 to 75,000 with a center origin. And then the rest of the parameters, they're pretty straightforward. We won't be using them for this example. So I'll close out of that. If I didn't have Illustrator open, this will launch it. So that's something to keep in mind. But because Illustrator can sometimes be a little slow to launch, we are just going to run it with it open. So all I have to do now is click run. And we should end up, let me see what's going on at the bottom. We should end up with a very similar document, completely styled and labeled in Illustrator. So it says it's successful. I'll switch over and we'll watch it happen here. You can see our layers are coming in. It's importing our data. It'll take a moment. There's a lot happening here. It is importing our data. It's applying those themes. It is reading in the Label Pro settings file. It's going to apply those labels. And I'll give it a moment. And there we go. There is definitely some excess data hanging off the edge of the artboard. That's just based on the buffer size that I gave to that clipper object. So I could tweak that, or I could just crop from within here. We've still cut down those data sets significantly, so the crop's not going to take as long. But yeah, using that workspace, you can automate a pretty complex workflow, and you can end up in a really great spot to come into Illustrator to do your final details. That may seem like a lot of setup as well, but when in a more realistic scenario, when you're working with repetitive processes or large mapping projects, maybe, for example, my land cover data set has been updated and I want to generate the same map, but with updated data, I could come into this workspace, swap out this data source, run the whole process again, and end up with an updated map. There are a lot of customers that are utilizing FME and MAPublisher to generate these very lengthy workflows. So I think it's an awesome option if you guys do have access to FME. That's something to consider. You can do all of your data ETL, your geoprocessing, and then when you bring it into MAPublisher, styling and map view configuration and labeling can all be done. So I think it's a super powerful tool that I don't think enough people utilize, actually. And the nice thing about FME is there's no coding involved. It's an automated process and it's very intuitive.
Riley, did you mention that do we need another license for FME?
It is an add-on, yes, for the license. It is the FME Auto add-on. So kind of similar to how you have Label Pro as your add-on to MAPublisher. Okay. So now that we've covered some of the things that you can do in MAPublisher, I'll close out this presentation to show you who in the industry is using MAPublisher and point you towards a great place to see some examples of their maps. So on this slide here, we've got a list of some of our customers. A lot of those names you probably can recognize. If you want to see examples of great maps that have been created with MAPublisher and Geographic Imager, I think a great place to see that is our map gallery on avenza.com. If you haven't looked through here already, this is a great place to see maps of all different types, many different styles. It's a great source of inspiration, I think. If you click on a map, you can also get a bit more context. You can see who made it, what it was printed on, lots of information here. And then we also have a map contest every year. So for our winning maps in that contest, we provide a spotlight article. So I'll open up this one here. And this one, in the spotlight article, it's not only going to give you that context that comes along with all of the other maps in our gallery, but we ask that they go into the process of making the map as well. So I think if you could read through those spotlight articles, that would be a great source of information about other ways that people are using MAPublisher, with some nicer looking examples than something I can show you. These are really incredible maps. Another thing that I think would be useful for you guys, if you want some more in-depth stories from some of our users, we have Cartographer Chronicles on our website as well. So here's an example, Glenn Pawelski. He is one of our MAPublisher power users. They are essentially interviews with some of these cartographic professionals. They go into their career paths, examples of their work, things that they are currently working on, and they give some advice as well for cartographers going into the industry. So I definitely encourage you to look through these. Unfortunately, because I'm not a cartographer, I can't give you insight as to what it's like to be in the cartographic industry firsthand. But I think it's best to just get it straight from the best on our website there. So I'd encourage you to check that out. All right. And that concludes my presentation. Hopefully we have enough time for questions. If there's anything that you can't think of today, or you just want to reach out and ask anything along the way, I'm absolutely happy to be a resource for you, or you can reach out to our lovely support team. Gabriel will be happy to hear from you as well. But yeah, please ask any questions that you may have.
Thanks a lot. Guys, what questions do you have? Please free to unmute yourself and ask any questions.
I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can see your lovely faces if you do ask a question.
I don't have any questions as of right now, but I'm sure after I explore this more outside of this presentation, I will. So
Awesome.
yeah, it's just that the FME workbench was full. I like the way that looked, the way the flow was. It's just a nice model space there.
Yeah, absolutely. Like there's definitely a ton in FME that I still have to learn. The tools in there are endless, but I love using it. I think it's so fun because I had a bit of experience doing coding when I was in school, and I don't have a grasp on any of that anymore. But it's fun to be able to automate things from more of an approachable workspace.
Well, like you said, it's quite powerful in the sense of you set your model up, you create your flow, and then you just add your data from wherever. So, or if, like you said, the data changes from place to place, or like you said, if the land cover data that changes, it's just a simple drop and play. So,
Yep. Okay, I think there's a question in the chat. How would you recommend one stay in touch with updates and trainings offered by Avenza? We do post all of our trainings on the website. If you are interested in training, you can also just reach out to our teams, and we'd love to set you up with either our training courses that are offered bi-monthly, or sometimes we do custom trainings as well, depending on the needs there. As far as staying in touch with updates, we're on social media, and you can always visit our website. We keep things up to date there as well.
Does this software package, is it available like others? I have a small business, very small business. There's two of us, and with Autodesk, for example, I buy points, or I buy like it's almost like a token. I don't pay a monthly subscription. It's as used type of situation. Is Avenza a software package also? Can you buy it that way?
No, it is just a upfront license cost, yeah, and then Label Pro and FME are the added license options as well.
Okay.
So Riley, we don't have a license for the graphic imager, geographic imager. So in terms of bringing in a hillshade and making a topographic map, could you comment on what processing capabilities we get with the raster processing add-on, or the software that we cannot get with MAPublisher? Right now, we kind of download a DEM, make a hillshade, multi-directional hillshade, and then smooth it out, run a median filter on it, and it looks nice, and that we bring in. But if we are only doing raster-based processing, I know the ability is limited in Illustrator and MAPublisher. Would you comment on the capabilities of geographic imager and some of the maps that you showed that was the winner of the competition? Was that map made just based on MAPublisher, or they processed something in graphic imager and then brought that in Illustrator?
I believe that one map that I showed was just MAPublisher, so I assume they used some other software for their imagery that was included in there. Yeah, like you said, there's limitations when it comes to raster data in MAPublisher. Hopefully when you bring your data in, it's kind of as is, because you can't reproject it or crop it. Illustrator in general is just for vector data for the most part. But in Geographic Imager, it's a GIS tool, and it's in Photoshop. So you have the endless amount of imagery capabilities within just Photoshop on its own, but everything is referenced through Geographic Imager. We have a terrain shader. We have, trying to think, you could work with all of your different raster bands properly within there. You can crop using kind of like a spatial filter like we looked at. You can also bring in vector data as well that's referenced, so you can stack that on top of your imagery using GI. Yeah, we're working on some exciting stuff there as well, like generating contours that are referenced based on DEMs. So hopefully that's coming down the line. If you are familiar with Photoshop, I think that's where my weakness lies. Photoshop's kind of a beast that I have yet to tackle. But if you want the ability to work with amazing imagery, which we see Nat Geo doing a lot of this, and NASA, they're using Photoshop and Geographic Imager just to basically add in that reference capability. So it takes it from just being a still image to maintaining a reference. If you want any extra information, maybe some more detailed questions, then I would love to have you reach out to me, and I can hopefully provide a better answer. It's been a while since we've been in Geographic Imager. We just came off of our MAPublisher 11.3 release, and I definitely work closer with MAPublisher, but I would love to get you any answers that you need if you want to reach out to me.
Sure, I'll probably download a trial version of it and give it a go and see.
Awesome.
I know students, you have questions. Please feel free to ask any questions.
I have one question. As far as like within Illustrator and using MAPublisher, are there any options for like collaboration if two people or three people are wanting to work on the same project? Like, how would you set that up?
I don't believe there is through Illustrator. You can use cloud documents, but they're attached to your Creative Cloud license or your account and your license. So those will save as you go and you can access them anywhere you're signed in. But as far as active collaboration, yeah, it's kind of sending your files back and forth as far as I know. Anything else?
Anyone else?
Like I said, you can reach out to me afterwards if that's your preferable method of asking questions. I'd be happy to send you steps for anything that you're hoping to accomplish or just answering your general questions. I'm definitely a resource for you.
I know their capability exists in MAPublisher to like edit shapefiles and create your vector data, like spatially speaking. Um, have you done like, do you recommend doing that or just prepare your data in QGIS or ARC and then directly bring in here for just design? What would be your recommendation?
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people don't consider. You can definitely create your spatial data in Illustrator. So there's tons of drawing tools, like there's different shapes or even just manually drawing in Illustrator that you can utilize. You just have to make sure that you're drawing into a map layer. So if you go to your map views panel and create a map layer from scratch, you can then have that as your active layer and draw right into it, and it will inherit all the geospatial information from that map view. So yeah, I think a lot of people miss out on that. They don't consider that you can create your data, and you absolutely can.
Any more questions?
It's early where you guys are.
Yeah. Okay, I think we have your email, so our students might email you if they have any questions. Maybe they're feeling a little bit shy right now because they ask me a lot of questions when we are doing our lab exercises. I'd like to
I have a
thank both.
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
When you're using the Label Pro and like say you use it and you don't like the font or the font size, is there an easy way to change that without deleting everything and just redoing it?
You do have to undo it and redo it. So I recommend once you get everything set up, click save, and then everything's saved in there. You haven't applied anything. And that way, anytime you go in and actually apply the labels, if you undo it, everything is restored. You can go in and make any tweaks to your rules or styles. But yeah, it isn't something that you can just easily pick in and choose where to make edits, but it is also as easy as edit undo. We like to keep undo as our best friend in Illustrator. So yeah, that's how you do that. Anything else?
I just want to pop in quickly as well, just from the support team. If you have any questions while you're working through any workflows or anything like that, anything that comes up, you're more than happy. More than happy to help you guys. I put the email in the chat there, so just send us an email, support@avenza.com. We're a pretty small team, but we're small but mighty. We have a team of 6 that we work on, and we work on cases. So anything that you guys have any questions that are related to the software, whether it be MAPublisher, Geographic Imager, or Avenza Maps, if you're using the app at all, please feel free to send us an email. We're more than happy to help. Emails and live chats as well via the website. So if you have any questions, we're more than happy. So just wanted to drop that in as you're working through anything. We're also a resource that you can reach out.
Thanks, Gabriel. I think we have exhausted our time. It's right sharp 1 hour since we joined. I'll let both of you guys go, but thanks a lot for giving us your time and showing. I definitely did not know about the FME auto workflow. And I hope the students really loved this presentation. I did. And
Kamisha, I enjoyed it as well, very much so. And thank you, Riley.
Yeah, thank you guys very much. This was a really fun opportunity for me. I love to see fresh faces using our products. So
yeah,
thanks very much. And yeah, please reach out. Don't be afraid to. Happy to be there for you.
yeah. So I'm gonna stop the recording here.